We all have this picture in our heads, right? You save some money from your paycheck.
Put it in the bank
Yeah, put it in the bank. The bank gathers all those savings, and then, businesses borrow it.
to build factories, buy machines.
Exactly, to invest and grow the economy. Saving first, then investment. That's kind of the standard story.
It is. But what if maybe that story isn't quite the full picture? Or maybe it's even a bit backwards.
That's what we're digging into today, this whole relationship between saving and investment.
We're looking specifically at an idea from Warren Mulsler, something discussed in the MMT Unplugged chat called the saving story: chicken, egg, or economic omelet.
Right. And the big question is, do we really need all those savings sitting there before investment can happen?
Our goal here, for you listening, is to really unpack this, to look at how saving and investment might actually work in, the real world, the modern economy.
And hopefully get a clearer, maybe even surprising view without drowning in jargon.
Exactly. A deep dive, but keeping it understandable.
Okay, so let's start with that traditional story, the standard view. How does it normally get explained?
Well, the conventional idea, they often call it the loanable funds theory.
Roundable funds.
Yeah.
Right.
And it basically suggests that savings, from people like you and me, from businesses too, they pile up.
In banks and financial institutions.
Right. And this creates a supply of funds, a pool of money.
And businesses wanting to invest, they dip into that pool.
That's the idea. They need capital for a new factory, new tech, whatever. They borrow from this pool of savings. So saving comes first. It provides the resources.
And more saving means more funds available, which should mean more investment. That's the logic.
Precisely. And that's why you see policies like tax breaks for retirement accounts.
Yeah, trying to get people to save more.
The thinking is boost savings, increase that pool of capital, make it easier for businesses to borrow and invest, and boom, economic growth.
Makes intuitive sense on the surface.
It does. But modern monetary theory, MMT, offers a really different take on this, a challenging one.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. MMT says, what? That it happens the other way around.
In many crucial ways, yes. The MMT argument is that investment spending often creates an equal amount of saving.
Whoa. So investment first, then saving pops up because of it.
That's the core idea. Saving isn't necessarily the prerequisite, the fuel you need beforehand. It's more like an outcome, an accounting record almost of investment that's already taken place.
Okay, my brain is shifting gears here. This sounds a lot like Keynes and his whole paradox of thrift thing. Is that related?
Absolutely, it's directly related. The paradox of thrift is a perfect illustration of this dynamic.
Remind us how that works again.
Okay, so Keynes pointed out what happens if everyone, households, businesses, all decide to save more money at the same time.
They spend less, right?
Exactly. They cut back on spending,
Yeah.
tighten their belts, but your spending is my income, and my spending is your income.
Ah, right. So if everyone spends less,
Then total income starts to fall across the whole economy. Businesses see sales drop.
their inventories pile up.
Yeah. So what do? They might cut production, maybe lay people off, postpone that investment they were planning.
So less economic activity overall, lower incomes.
And here's the paradox. Saving depends on income. If total income shrinks, even if everyone's trying to save a bigger percentage of their smaller income,
The total amount saved might actually go down.
it could. The attempt to save more collectively can lead to less total saving. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a leak by pouring less water into it. The level just drops faster.
Wow. So trying to be thrifty individually could collectively backfire. That's a powerful idea.
It really is. It highlights how interconnected spending, income, and saving are.
Okay, so if MMT says investment creates saving, walk us through how that actually works. Give us an example.
Sure. Let's say a company decides we're building a new factory. Big investment.
How do they pay for it?
Well, they might use some profits they've already saved up. That's business saving. That fits the old story partly. But often, especially for big projects, they'll go to a bank and get a loan.
Right. And this is where the MMT view of banking comes in, isn't it? It's different from just lending out existing savings.
Exactly. This is crucial. The MMT view is that banks don't primarily act like intermediaries, just taking deposits from saver A and lending them to borrower B.
They don't need my savings deposit first before they can lend to the factory builder.
Not necessarily, no. When a bank approves a loan, it essentially creates new money. It credits the borrower's account, the factory builder's account in this case.
Creates it out of thin air.
Well, electronically.
Mm-hmm.
By making the loan, the bank creates a new asset for itself, the loan, and a new liability, the deposit in the borrower's account. Loans create deposits.
Okay, that's a fundamental difference. Loans create deposits. Got it.
So the company now has this new deposit, this loan money, in its account. What does it do?
It starts spending it on construction materials, workers' wages, machinery.
Precisely. And that spending becomes income for other people and businesses. The
Okay.
construction workers get paid, the suppliers get paid, the machine manufacturers get paid.
Ah, I see. So the investment spending directly creates new income.
Yes. And what do those workers and suppliers do with their new income?
They spend some of it and they save some of it.
Exactly. A portion of that newly generated income created by the initial investment spending becomes new saving. The Investment Act itself led directly to the saving.
And that ties into that accounting thing you mentioned. Investment equals saving.
Right. In a simple model, no government, no international trade, it's an identity. Investment spending I has to equal saving. Every dollar invested becomes income, and the part of that income not consumed is, by definition, saving.
So that quote you mentioned, savings is the accounting record of investment.
Yeah, from Professor Basil Moore, cited by Mosler. It captures that idea perfectly. Saving follows investment, recording that it happened.
This really changes how you look at policies aimed at boosting saving, like those tax-deferred retirement plans.
It does. The intention behind those plans is clear.
Mm-hmm.
Encourage people to save more now, supposedly building up funds for future investment.
But MMT is skeptical about how well that works, or even if it's necessary.
The skepticism comes from the immediate effect. These plans work by getting people to reduce their current spending.
Right, you save instead of consuming today.
MMT calls that a demand leakage. Money is being pulled out of the active flow of spending in the economy right now.
But isn't the idea that this freed up money then gets channeled into investment?
That's the assumption of the loanable funds view. But MMT asks, why do businesses invest?
Well, you said earlier because they expect demand for their products. They expect customers.
Exactly. Businesses invest when they see strong sales, when they're optimistic about future demand. If everyone is cutting back spending because they're trying to save more,
Then overall demand weakens.
precisely. And weak demand is a signal not to invest. Why build a bigger factory if you don't think you can sell the extra stuff you'll make?
So, ironically, encouraging more saving could actually discourage the investment it's supposed to enable.
That's the potential paradox, yes. The MMT critique suggests these policies, by dampening demand today, might actually reduce business incentive to invest.
And what happens if demand falls too much?
Then, the argument goes, you might actually need the government to step in.
How?
Through, say, tax cuts or increased government spending running a deficit just to prop up demand and keep the economy from shrinking too much.
Wow. So the policies pushed by people who often dislike government deficits.
Might inadvertently create the very conditions that make those deficits seem necessary to maintain economic stability. That's the irony Mosler highlights.
Okay, so if pre-existing savings aren't the main driver, what does drive investment, according to this MMT perspective?
Number one, as we just discussed, is effective demand. Businesses need to see customers, basically. Strong, reliable demand for what they sell.
That makes sense. If people are buying, build more capacity to sell more.
Exactly. Government fiscal policy plays a big role here in maintaining that aggregate demand.
Okay, what else?
Then there's Keynes' famous animal spirits.
Ah, yes, the vibe of the market.
Kind of, yeah. It's about business confidence. Optimism. Are business leaders feeling good about the future? Are they willing to take risks? If the mood is positive, they're more likely to invest.
Confidence matters. Got it. What else?
Innovation is huge. New technologies, new products, new ways of doing things. These create obvious reasons to invest to stay competitive or capture new markets.
Like investing in AI or green energy tech right now.
Perfect examples.
Yeah.
And then, of course, finance still matters.
Even if banks create loans.
Yes. The cost and availability of finance are still factors.
Right.
What's the interest rate? That's influenced by the central bank, and MMT generally prefers low rates to encourage investment. And are banks willing to lend? They still assess risk.
So the terms of borrowing still play a part.
Absolutely. And finally, don't forget public investment.
Government spending on infrastructure, research.
Exactly. Things like better roads, faster internet, funding basic science, education.
Yeah.
This not only boosts productive capacity directly, but can also encourage private investment. They call it crowding in. Good infrastructure makes it easier for businesses to operate and invest.
Okay, that's a lot to chew on. Let's try to boil it down. What are the main takeaways for you, the listener, from this MMT view on saving and investment?
I think the first big one is investment spending tends to create its own saving. Saving is more of an outcome, not necessarily the essential input it's often made out to be.
So the economy isn't simply constrained by how much we've all saved up already.
That's a key implication. Second, remember the paradox of thrift. Everyone trying to save more at once by spending less can actually shrink the economy and potentially even reduce total savings.
Because less spending means less income, means less ability to save. That cycle.
Right. Third, the role of banks. MMT emphasizes that banks create loans and loans create deposits. They're not just passing along existing savings.
That's a big shift in thinking for many people. Loans create deposits.
It is. And finally, policies focused only on boosting household saving by cutting consumption might be counterproductive for investment.
Because they can hurt the demand that actually motivates businesses to invest in the first place.
Exactly. Businesses invest based on expected demand and profit, not just the availability of saved funds.
So that old story, save, lend, invest, grow, it's just too simple.
It seems much more nuanced than that, yeah. The relationship is more dynamic. Investment seems to often lead the dance, creating the savings in its wake.
It definitely gives you a different perspective. Thinking about this, how might your understanding of, say, economic news reports or even your own financial planning shift? Something to consider.
Definitely food for thought.
Next time on the deep dive, we're shifting focus slightly, but staying on fundamental concepts. We'll be getting into value, inflation, and the price system.
Starting with a look at a general theory of value in a monetary economy, what actually gives money its value, how are prices determined?
It sounds fascinating. Join us for that. So maybe the takeaway today isn't just about saving more individually.
Perhaps it's more about fostering the conditions for productive investment demand, confidence, innovation, infrastructure.
The kind of investment that generates income and prosperity more broadly.
That seems to be the direction this MMT perspective points us towards.